All right, so many of you are asking about what the Facebook page is all about, and what it really is about the Facebook group is discussion for things that don't fit neatly under a video. So if you've got questions that apply to a specific video on the site, definitely post those there. You want feedback on your swing, but also sparking discussion so that you can kind of get into some of the nuts and bolts and things. And so one of the first things I posted, which got a lot of comments here yesterday, was this picture of a student going through a clinic and going through what is something that's super, super common. And so I posted this pic and said, what do you see wrong? Because I want you guys to start thinking critically, because this is what's going to allow you to fix things in your own swing. So I posted this pic, and while you're sitting here looking at it, I want you to look at this and tell me what you see going on here. So this is basically just after impact, doing a one arm only drill, left arm only drill, and in a position where you start to see a lot of really, really common faults that create a lot of different issues, not just issues for your lower back and potentially injuring yourself, but ball flight issues as well. So as you're looking at this picture, I want you to think through critically, what is it that you see that's going off here? And if you relate to this, if you see this in your own swing, I want you to start to understand what's going on and what kind of issues you're going to see with it. So then I posted a picture here with a bunch of lines drawn on it, and I did a big explanation here for it. So I wanted to walk you guys through that explanation so that you understand exactly what's going on and how to fix this own issue in your swing. So once I started drawing the lines, there's a few things that you're going to notice. So one of the biggest things, the quickest thing that you need to check at impact is that right foot or your trail leg is still on the ground. Now, why does that matter? Because it sets off a chain reaction of a million different things that start going wrong in your swing. So the right foot up in the air by itself doesn't really do anything. It doesn't impact anything. But what it does is it's showing you the movement, where the force of movement is coming from that leads to a chain reaction of issues. So once we see that this right foot's up in the air, when I drew a line, you can see here that the right knee is obviously kicked in way towards the left. I know some instructors actually advocate that, but I'm going to show you why that's not something you want to do. So you can see here that I've a big kink in this right leg, and what that's going to typically do is cause you to have a lot of secondary axis tilt, which is represented by this light blue line here. So you can see his spine is leaned way back away from the target, and this puts you into a side bend position that is potentially dangerous for your spine, and especially when you combine it with rotation. And now this is the issue. So once this right foot comes up in the air, that no longer can act as a brake to limit the amount of hip rotation. As I've talked about on the roll the right foot video on the site, if that right foot comes up, then your hips can over-rotate. You could turn your hips 90 degrees from here. But if that right heel stays on the ground, you can't turn your hips any more than 45 degrees. And of course, at impact, your hips should be somewhere in the ballpark of 30 to 45 degrees open. So it's an awesome, simple check, a simple fix to keep your hips from overturning in the downswing. And then also, this right foot coming up allows your hips to move further laterally than they should. Now, why does this matter for your lower back? When you combine a lot of side bend with hip rotation, that is the recipe for a bulging disc. So if you want back pain, by all means, keep letting that foot come up. But if you don't, obviously keeping that foot down keeps your pelvis more underneath your torso, keeps you from getting into an excessive secondary axis tilt and side bend position, and protects your lower back. So it's a win-win. Of course, it also gives you more consistency because your lower body is then anchored to the ground instead of continuing to move both laterally and rotationally in the downswing, which just basically makes hitting the golf ball a moving target at that point, because your lower body, your foundation of your swing, is now shifting throughout the whole swing. And now, as a secondary byproduct of this as well, you can see that his head is too far back at impact, so the ball obviously being up here. You would think that this is some of you guys guessed this on the Facebook post, that he's going to probably hit it fat because his head's too far back. Well, certainly would make sense why you would think that, but that's not actually what would typically happen. When you have secondary axis tilt, a lot of secondary axis tilt like you see here from this blue line, it's actually a shallowing move in the golf swing. And so when you have a shallowing move, the tendency is for the angle of attack to also be shallow. So one way I like to think about this, if I can draw a couple quick lines here, is that think of this triangle formed by your hands and forearms and spine angle as a really generic aiming point for the bottom of your swing arc. Now, when your spine is leaned back like this, it's going to move the bottom of your swing arc forward. Now, obviously, the bottom of your swing arc isn't way out here. That would be way, way far forward. But you can use this as a generic aiming point. So people who have no axis tilt, and this whole triangle will be moved way back behind there. That's when you start to see fat shots. One of the reasons you start to see fat shots, obviously, pushing from the right side is the main one. But when you start having a lot of secondary axis tilt and your shoulders get very steep like this, that starts moving the bottom of the swing arc further forward. And so this actually would cause a lot of thin shots. And of course, also, when you have a lot of secondary tilt and you're pushing from the right side, it tends to shift the horizontal swing plane out to the right. So you start hitting blocks and hooks. So anyway, this, as you can see, is kind of a all-encompassing and cumbersome discussion for a lot of different things that all goes back to simply doing nothing more than pushing off that right foot. And the symptom that you see is that right heel coming up in the air. And that leads to all of these different issues that I just discussed. So that's why I harp on those little things, like the little fundamentals that you're working on in your body movements, because all this little tiny little mistake led to all of these different things going on in the swing. So that's what the Facebook group is for, because obviously this wouldn't fit perfectly into like one category under one specific video. I guess I could, of course, put it under the roll of the right foot, but I wanted you to understand the whole picture, the quan, seeing the whole thing as one little mistake leads to a chain reaction of a lot of things going wrong.